Hello AWS friends. In this tutorial, let's set up a Kubernetes cluster with Kops on AWS. So before we get started, let's have a look on our README file. You find all these required document and scripts in my GitHub account. You can have a look on them in here. Basically, that's a README. It's a scripts file for creating the cluster and also scripts for creating the dashboard and the user and the role binding. Two YAML files for the user and the role binding, and that's it. So before we get started and create our cluster, maybe one sentence in advance. We're going to create this cluster using Kops, which is pretty easy, and as you can see in the following minutes, we're gonna create this cluster with only a couple of commands. There's another way creating a Kubernetes cluster on AWS using kube control, but that way you have to select first the master for your cluster, installing all the required tools and setting up the cluster, and then selecting the nodes and launching them as EC2 instances, preparing them, installing all the required tools and connecting them to the master. So this is a little bit more time consuming. I'm gonna cover this in another tutorial because it's anyway interesting to see what Kops is doing there in background when creating the cluster. But today let's have a look on how to create a cluster with Kops. So let's get started. Let's have a look in our README. And so first thing what we're going to need is the best way to start is creating your cluster from a local machine, from a Linux machine. I'm using this Ubuntu here from a virtual machine. You're going to install AWS command line tool and also Kops. I'm not gonna cover this in this tutorial. At the bottom of the document you can find some commands to install these tools. And once you're ready on your local machine, so first thing is you have to do a AWS configure and select the region. We're gonna install our Kubernetes cluster in Ireland, and you have to create a S3 bucket. After this we are ready to create the cluster. Then we're going to create our Kubernetes cluster with Kops, and what is optional is if you want to have a dashboard, which makes it a little bit more easier for administration of your cluster, then we're going to cover also how to create this dashboard, and what is required to create this dashboard is a user and a role binding. So let's get started. Let's switch to our command line, and now let's create our cluster. So first thing, we have to create our S3 bucket. This is the command, and as I told you, I already did a AWS configure, so if you're going to execute this, do this in advance. Now we have a S3 bucket, and we have to enable versioning on this bucket, and this is the second command. So now we have a S3 bucket. Let's have a look if it was created. And here it is. Let's switch back to EC2, and as you can see by now, we don't have any instances here in our region. And now if we switch back to our document, we are almost ready to install the cluster. We need one more command. So now this is the most important command. We can create our cluster. So, Kops is creating our cluster. It's in progress. And let's have a look on the AWS console. If we already can see any instances. Yes, here we are. Instances are launching. And this is gonna take some minutes, so let's pause for a minute and look back once our cluster is created. So our instances have been created. Let's have a look what we have by here. We have a master, Kubernetes master, which is a M3 medium. This was picked by default from Kops, and we have two nodes, two T2 mediums machines. And as you can see, their status checks are okay, they are running, and we can also check with kube control. Yes, we have a master and two nodes. So let's have a look on how to create the dashboard. We can switch to this file scripts dashboard and run this first command. Got it. Now let's create the user. Let's create the role binding. And before we open our dashboard, let's get the token. Here it is. And now we're gonna copy the token because we're gonna need it. And let's open the dashboard. Now first we have to run one more command. This is kubectl proxy. And here we are. Our dashboard is ready. Let's see if our token is working. And here we are. This is our Kubernetes dashboard. And as you can see, we have namespaces, we have two nodes, and you can have a look on detail on your Kubernetes dashboard once you have it installed on your account. So that's it basically. Pretty easy to install this cluster. You find all commands and scripts in my GitHub. So please enjoy installing a Kubernetes cluster with Kops. Thanks for listening and see you on the next lesson. Bye.